live. There we go.
Hello, everybody.
There we go.
It is 8:27. You've got 1 minute to grab a friend, grab a drink, but don't grab your friend's drink.
That's right. Unless you're bringing it to your friend to share.
Which is what I did.
You did.
We hadn't even opened our drinks tonight.
I know, we've been
It's
running.
just one of those nights.
It's a good
Cheers
night, though. Cheers
to Manor Hill, Hillside Haze.
Cheers to all things Baltimore.
All things Baltimore. So we just got in from our first playoff game,
Ever.
which was not a win.
It
But
was a win.
there was this
win
moment
for
when
us.
we were leaving, and Sophie looked at me and she said, "In real life, Baltimore won tonight."
That's exactly right.
And I feel that deep in my soul.
That's exactly right.
In real life, we won.
That's right.
So, yeah, it's October. It is baseball playoff postseason. It is WNBA postseason. So, what a time to be alive. What a time. University of Georgia lost in football this week.
Sorry, Byron.
Life doesn't get better. Yeah,
Is it working for you?
Yeah.
That's good.
So that's just
Was it
you.
working for me?
To grab a friend.
There we go.
Yep.
Join us. Sorry, I just shared it.
You're good. If Talking Toast is a meaningful thing to you, go ahead and give it a share and help other people get toasty.
That's right. And let us know where you're joining from tonight. And we recognize that there is a pretty big civics, something that civic-minded human beings will be watching tonight, and it's not Talking Toast. That's okay. We've got ours taping. We're going to go watch it later.
You can tape Talking Toast and come back to it, or you can tape that and go back to it.
That's right. That's right. And
you don't have to choose between them.
And we'll respond to chat things later. So if you want to chime in and let us know what's on your mind, we'd love it. We've got 3 people watching. So this is good. That's good.
It's good stuff.
Well, Talking Toast. This is a gathering of friends all across the country. We've even had some people across the globe that have joined in to Talking Toast, and it's a conversation.
Hey, yeah, it is a conversation. Why don't you pull up our notes?
Oh, okay.
Just so that, it's sometimes good to have.
We do have notes.
Brief notes. Not
You
really
really
any
want
notes.
me to pull these up?
It's probably not even worth it this week. We were at the baseball game until we walked into the house at about 8:00. So it was a 4:00 baseball game. We got there in the 5th inning, and it was so much fun. I was following a journalist on X and saw that they Twitter.
Oh, excuse me, Twitter. I got you.
Saw that they said I didn't have getting a $10 playoff ticket in the cards for the day, and I was like, $10 playoff ticket, and so I went and looked up tickets.
One of those.
Yeah, I went and looked up tickets, and sure enough, we got our all 3 tickets for $30. It was great.
That's awesome. All right, we've got some folks. Sonia said this is better than politics.
It is better
That's
than
awesome.
politics.
Steve Moore
We're
said
actually
that the
nice to
pumpkins
each other.
arrive. Steve, the pumpkins arrive on Friday. And they are coming from New Mexico. The
1,700 pumpkins.
Yeah, the company's doing okay. They're in Greensboro, North Carolina. So we were wondering what that meant about pumpkins. But yeah, they're coming from. It's only 1,700.
Yeah, so we've got 1,100 regular pumpkins.
That's more than 1,700.
1,100 regular pumpkins, and then multiple boxes of artisanal pumpkins.
Okay, all right, that'll be fun.
Yep.
We used to get ours in New Mexico too, so I bet it's the same.
I think it's one.
company.
I think there's one pumpkin dealer for all the churches.
This is all the pumpkin dealers. That's awesome. But yes, if you are in the Baltimore area, or if you're traveling to the Baltimore area,
Or
maybe
if you're
not by
traveling
flight
through the Baltimore area.
Yes, We will have a pumpkin patch at Christian Temple starting October 6th after church. It is going to be awesome. There are going to be tons and tons of pumpkins and gourds, and they had a list.
Gorgeous.
It will. They had a list of almost 20 different kinds of pumpkins.
Yeah.
I saw this. I haven't given that to you yet. It came in the mail.
Oh, good.
Our listing of all the different kinds, and so. They all have fun names like Spooky and all this kind of thing. So it's gonna be fun.
Bill Harding sound effects.
Yeah, Spooky. Bill Harding said Dallas is dry and looking forward to pumpkin patching.
That's right.
That's gonna be fun.
They drove down to Dallas.
They did. So cheers. So you really can say this is Texas. Woo! Everybody else said this ain't Texas.
This ain't Texas.
Okay. Little Beyonce reference for those in the know. Yeah.
Sophie sings it. This ain't Texas. Woo! Hallelujah.
This is great. That's great. So, Talking Toast is our weekly video podcast where we talk about all the things that are going on in our worlds, but all the things leading up to the homily or sermon moment also. So we pull back that curtain on the creative process. But we start every single week, by yawning first, and then we ask the question, what is sustaining you? And we want to know this for you. What is sustaining you? What is getting you by? What is that 808 beat? What is the thing that's the undercurrent that's moving you along? Speaking of moving you along, that screen just keeps on moving. Like literally moving
shifting
across the thing. Anyway, yeah. I don't know what to do with this. It's just again. Moving. It's gradually moving.
And there's this half screen over here. It's so weird.
Starting over on the other side.
It's so weird.
So yeah. You can't see that, but we can.
If you see our eyes dart over,
right, that's what's going on. So yeah, chime in. Let us know what is sustaining you. What is our
Sophie.
She's got headphones on. So yeah, let us know what is sustaining you, what is getting you by, what is that 808 beat in your world. Steve Moore just gave us the crying emoji, the laughing crying.
Story of my life.
There we go. So yeah, what is sustaining you? Katie, what is sustaining you?
Well, I did something that I've never done over the weekend. I did a bike race, and I finished dead last. But I had the most fun with it, and it ignited something in me, and it was hard as heck. My heart rate was at 170 or above for 30 minutes, which that never happens. That's the top of, for those of you who follow this kind of thing, that's the top of my lactic threshold. And but I just had the most fun with it, and I got muddy, and it was so fun to be able to go out there and do something that I was nervous about, but also learning, and anyway, it was fun.
You rocked it. Rick said, "Stop it! You had me at I finished." You did.
I finished.
You did.
It is seriously the hardest thing that I've ever done.
I'm so proud of you. It was
great.
And
yeah, I had so much fun. It was one of those things where it was so muddy, and I had put new tires on my bike to have extra grip. But I still just I would go in the mud and just spin out and just flop over. It was great.
Yeah, it was fun to watch.
Yeah.
Sophie and I had a really good time watching you, and that was a really good example.
It was hilarious too, because there was one time when I was going up they had and the easiest thing John never did. They had it's this set of stairs called a flyover that you have to carry your bike up. You shoulder your bike and you carry it up the stairs. And that was right where John and Sophie were standing. And so Sophie yells out, "Hey, Mom, does your mother let you date? And not only was I dying on the inside of like oxygen deprivation, but I was also dying on the
You're
inside
laughing.
because I was laughing.
Yep. Yeah, there it goes. The screen, instead of moving, it just like turned off. Now it turned back on and moved again. Yeah. Well, anyway, we were really proud of you.
Yeah,
That was
fun.
awesome.
It was fun.
That was awesome.
What's sustaining you?
That was fun, getting to watch you do something out of your comfort zone and try something. That was really life-giving. I'll be honest, this sounds really dramatic, but what has been sustaining me is throughout the weekend, hearing that folks are gradually getting power back.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like that's not what's sustaining me, but I needed to hear from my people that everything's going to that everybody made it through.
Yeah.
And so what has been sustaining me is every text we get from different parts of North and South Carolina when folks are saying, "Hey, power got turned back on," or "We've got water," or that kind of thing. That has been really, really, really good to hear.
Yeah.
That was something we were going to probably talk about a little bit tonight.
Yeah.
But my parents, my dad, you saw, texted in and said, safe and sound at home. They got power back today, an hour after they arrived. An hour before they arrived is when it turned on. And that, I don't know, that's really good, because I've been sitting back worrying about all different kinds of folks. And
it was a wide swath, too, because my parents just got power back on Sunday.
Yeah.
And they're on the complete other side of Georgia. It's been a scary week to see, not just to see people suffer, but to see these. Anya got power back in St. Simon's.
See, I bet Margot probably had that too.
Yeah. It is something to see people struggle and to be powerless, to not really be able to do anything from a distance.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a different level when it's like your heart's space.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Like Baltimore is home, and like these are the places that have shaped us.
Yeah.
And so that's been really hard to watch.
Yeah. So the sustaining part has been the hearing folks are making it.
Yeah.
The hard part has been going back and seeing like all these. I kind of went through pictures today on your. If you have an iPhone, you can go to your albums and you can do it by location and see where your photos have come from. And so I just looked at like Lake Lure and Chimney Rock and which was always like my getaway. Even in high school, that was my getaway.
Yeah.
Because
it's 30 minutes from your house.
Yeah, and then Karamai is a really great place in Tryon, North Carolina, that is really special to our family. It's my parents' favorite restaurant, and they love to take us there. One of Sophie's favorite restaurants.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And we got married in Hendersonville.
We technically tied the knot, signed the
papers
in Hendersonville. Our wedding ceremony was in Elkin, North Carolina, which Elkin had power. I think did okay.
Yeah.
Through all that, but man, it's difficult to see.
It's hard.
But glad to see folks gradually getting power back, and it's good stuff.
Yeah.
That is, like, sometime a while back I preached about don't forget to sing when you win, like with all the little wins, and like power coming back on, that kind of stuff. It's a win. Like we got to sing it, and those things are sustaining. Yeah. So.
Do you mind scooting over just a touch?
No, I don't.
I feel like I'm flirting with the edge of the screen. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, so we just finished up a sermon series on Bluey and the Gospel of James, and it was a whole lot of fun. We'll be happy to share as much or as little with anybody who wants those resources later on. But it's interesting because the lectionary goes to one of the creation stories this week.
Yeah.
So we decided a couple of months ago, that this week we would do a focus on creation, where one of us would preach on the first creation story, and the other would preach on the second creation story, which, yes, there are two in just the first 3 chapters of Genesis.
Yeah. And the second one is the one that shows up in the lectionary for World Communion Sunday. And that's what this Sunday is, which I think is a really beautiful kind of celebration. When you think about it as like there are churches around the world.
Yeah, so say more about World Communion Sunday.
Yeah. World Communion Sunday is a celebration where churches from all different kinds of backgrounds commit to thinking about our world, which works really well with the Genesis text, and participate in communion. Not all churches, like Disciples of Christ, do communion every Sunday. So a lot of times what churches will do is they'll make that one of their specific times that they'll take communion together. And to think that it's across all different kinds of backgrounds, all different kinds of ethnicities, all different kinds of traditions that are all kind of gathering around. That's really special to me. Yeah. And so we will focus on World Communion Sunday kind of in the other parts of worship and tie it in to the homilies like we always somehow end up doing. So I'm really excited about Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 and World Communion. And it's going to happen. I mean, you got to have bread, and you got to have grapes. I mean, you got to have wheat and you got to have grapes. Right?
Yeah, you got to
part of communion.
Exactly. So, you're going to be preaching on Genesis 1.
Yeah.
Genesis 1 through 2-3.
Yeah.
So the first creation story actually ends after the chapter break in Genesis 2.
Yeah.
Which is a whole thing. We don't need to get into that.
The professor was always like, "Why?"
The chapter breaks. The chapter breaks were a mistake
of a chapter break.
The chapter breaks were put in much later. So we have this first story that goes all the way through a couple of verses in the next chapter. First creation story. What are you thinking about it?
So I love in this creation story, there's so much. It's really, if I think about my favorite passage of scripture, I think it's Genesis 1. There's something really, really special to me because it includes original blessing after all of creation is kind of completed. And God rests, but before God rests, God looks at all that God had created and says, it is very good. And that doesn't happen until after God creates humans in God's own image. The Imago Dei is what some people would call that. That's in Latin. But so I love that it starts off that humans at our core are created by a good God who looks at all of creation and says, very good.
Yeah.
I think that's really beautiful. I think there's some great stuff with how the ancient world viewed water and the necessity of water, and then land being formed, but it was water first, which is very interesting if you think about science. That's kind of how it happened.
Yes, and that doesn't mean that this is a science book.
No,
that it's a scientific story.
No, but I do think it's very interesting from the ancient understanding, they started off with water.
Yeah.
And and it's not supposed to be a science book. That's not where I was going with that at all.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to make that explicit.
Yeah. and it's a story of creation, and then in Genesis 2 it starts off with another account of creation.
Yeah.
Right. So these are stories of beginnings. That's literally what Genesis means. So yeah, I love that in this text we have a God that the very first word used for God is Elohim, which is a plural word. So in the beginning they created, is how that could read.
Yeah, and let's come back to that when we get to the second
beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, or when God began to create.
When God began to create. When they began to create.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's I'm fascinated by this. I don't know where exactly I'm going with it.
Yeah, and for the record, anyone could spend like an entire year preaching on these texts.
Oh, absolutely.
Alone. There's a ton in there, so it's hard to narrow down to one thing that we're gonna really focus on for the 10 minutes. But I do want to say I find it really interesting that Genesis 1, the first story of creation, is poetic. It is considered Hebrew poetry. And then Genesis 2 is more of a story, more traditional storytelling, which both are needed and have to dance with each other as we think about this huge thing of creation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, one tool is not going to be sufficient to explain or to even get close to describing what has happened. And so what I love about this, with these sitting side by side, is it says one tool is never enough. One story is never enough. And we need multiple ways of telling that story. Poetically, we need it in storytelling. We need it in parables. We need it in healing, just like what we get in the New Testament. We get multiple modes of storytelling.
Yeah. And on top of that, it sets us up for a God of mystery.
Yeah.
Whenever you can't pinpoint and say, I mean, because if you look at these two accounts together, they have different orders. They have different ideas that they're expressing, different things that mean that the writer focuses on.
Yeah.
And I love that it sets us up for a God of mystery. Like, no, we're not going to be able to pinpoint all of this. And it also shows us the Hebrew tradition of storytelling, like around the campfire. And like, these are the things that were kind of passed along.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah. So I'm going to be preaching on the second story of creation, which is the one of God walking in the garden. So you've got an anthropomorphized God, meaning in human form. You've got this anthropomorphized God, and God creates Adam. Now, what is most interesting about this text is that Adam, the first being that God created, is actually an amalgamation of the genders. So if you're interested in queer liberation theology, and particularly trans liberation theology, this might be an interesting little string to follow, because Phyllis Tribble, who is one of our professors at Wake, Phyllis Tribble talks about this, that the humanoid Adam, which literally just means dirt creature.
Earth creature,
So this dirt creature contains within itself the capacity for maleness and femaleness in itself. And it is only the creation of the sexes only occurs when the second is pulled from Adam, right? And so we think of this often as the creation of Adam and Eve. But I still remember being a teenager and hearing at youth group that women had one, or that men had one less rib than women because we were made from men's ribs. And like there were girls who were like, I want to find my rib match, and like all kinds of weird stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is,
Wait a minute. You never said anything.
sorry.
I've never heard any of this before.
Yeah. So, but the truth of the matter is, I never said that. I never said that. I was never looking for that person.
But did anybody actually count their ribs?
No! And that's the thing. Like, these texts weren't meant to be scientific. They're not biology textbooks. As unfortunately they are taught that way in some places. But I'm going there by saying this. What I'm saying is there's this fascinating biblical interpretation. Bring back the McRib. I think that's the sermon title this week.
McRib is my rib match.
There's this fascinating.
McDonald's is my rib match. Sorry.
There's this fascinating biblical interpretation that, and if you're into these kinds of things, defense, that the first human was actually, you could say intersex or some asexual, and that I think that what that does is it creates this beautiful image, yet another image of a beautiful type of person. And so I was told to count my blessings, not my ribs. I got so sidetracked on that. Look up Phyllis Tribble. Mm-hmm. She's got this great essay on Genesis 2 and Adam, and the idea of sex being introduced at the separation of Adam, that it wasn't that God created an entirely new person, but God separated the two sexes from each other in the one person.
And it was created in that. And keep in mind, this is all story form too. This is not, we're not getting into science with this.
No. Yep.
These are ancient understandings, ancient explanations, and
which are all just grasping in the dark,
just like we
are.
Yes.
And so there's something beautiful about that. This is also the text. Genesis 2 and 3 is the text of the tree of good, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is the text where God creates life from dirt. So there are lots of
life.
There's lots of, for lack of a better term, ripe imagery.
Yeah.
Of God's partnership with creation, and then bestowing that partnership upon humans when Adam gets the opportunity to name the creatures and all that follows that.
Yeah. And it's hard to like listen to Genesis 2 being read and not understand it as kind of allegorical, or not understand it as like the story form, because it's like the way it's told is God felt like the human needed a partner, right? Mm-hmm. So God starts bringing in all these animals. Like, here's a duck-billed platypus. Oh, not a good partner. Like, here's, I just think about, and so it talks about the Adam, the earth creature, is naming other earth creatures. but can't find a suitable partner, which I just think is hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I think it sets us up for a God of mystery. Mm-hmm. It sets us up for a God of humor.
Yeah.
And it sets us up for a God of life, like breathing life.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about this earlier in light of the hurricane that hit the destruction that hit North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and we were talking about how
in Tennessee.
And we were talking about how interesting it is that creation has been preached in a way that has led us to this moment, right? Like, that has led us to this moment where the climate is such that storms can increase in strength from a category 1 to a category 4 in a matter of 24 hours. Mm-hmm. The way we talk about creation is absolutely essential to our everyday actions. And the actions, how we engage with the earth. And the fact of the matter is that the way that creation has been preached in the last, 20,000 years, give or take a few years, it has been one that set us up for an environment that is literally dying.
Like in Genesis 1, where many translations basically say that this is the earth is yours, humankind. Take it and have dominion over it.
Subdue it.
Yeah. And that's just not helpful language. But we're also looking at it, with a different lens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting to me. A human wrote this text at some point. Wrote these stories.
Humans.
Right, but someone wrote it down.
Yeah.
Right? It originated from a person. Did it not?
Yeah.
You don't need to argue about this.
Okay.
This is hypothetical. This is rhetorical.
Sorry. I thought you were getting into
no
different.
No. There are different authors in the book of Genesis. That's fine. Whatever. Priestley, they're all different authors. But the fact of the matter is, this idea of subduing the earth came from a human.
Yeah.
Right? How vain is it to think that one could subdue any of this?
Right.
When the reality is, over and over and over and over again, the earth has shown that it is way more powerful than any human could ever be.
Yeah.
And so, in light of that, how do you understand the creation story, or the creation stories? I think is a really interesting question to ask.
Yeah.
Who is subduing whom, or what is subduing what? I don't know if that's proper English.
Or is there another way to look at the word dominion?
Right.
Like, is it really supposed to be where you're lording over something, or is it supposed to be where it's actually you're called as a co-creator?
Stewardship.
And it's stewardship, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we've done a lot of talking. Thank you so much to everybody who chimed in tonight. I didn't think we'd have anybody on tonight. So I was really glad to see you all. And yeah, we've done some talking. We need to do some toasting.
Yeah, it's time.
You want to start us off?
Yeah. Cheers to y'all, and go forth from here, there, and everywhere. And remember that you have come from dirt. And that is a good thing.
That's right. And remember that God's first word over all of creation was, "It is very good," and that includes you.
Cheers.
Cheers, friends.
Cheers, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Cheers!
Cheers. All right. Well, we'll see you next week. We'll see you next week. we'll answer that question. She's there. And we'll talk to y'all soon. Have a great week, and I hope to get more messages with people with power restored and things, some semblance of normal coming back together. And know that you are loved and appreciated wherever you